How's it going, everyone? Yosef back here with another video, and I hope you're having an amazing week so far. I know you're probably wondering, Yosef, why are you in a park and not next to a car? Because I was doing some thinking, and it's kind of depressing actually when you think about it. There aren't a lot of cars that you can really think about that have a lot of soul and passion that went into their design and that goes into the driving feel of the car itself. And so it really got me thinking, is there a mainstream car that ticks those boxes? And sadly, I couldn't really think of a lot. You know, you automatically think of Alfa Romeo and Ferrari and Lamborghini and some of those exotic brands that are known for the passion that they have around them and the design and all of that good stuff that comes along with it. But when it comes to mainstream cars, there isn't really much out there. I mean, BMW's kind of interesting looking nowadays, Mercedes, a little generic looking, Audi, looks like they've only been designed with right angles. There aren't a lot of really exciting, sort of passionate, driven cars. And so that got me thinking, there's gotta be at least one out there. And guess what? Sitting out here in the park, I found it. Come with me. So the car brand that I'm referring to is Mazda. Now, hear me out, because Honda, Toyota, even Hyundai and Kia and all of those other car brands, they design them like appliances. They're very practical, they're fuel efficient, they've got a lot of really great benefits, but you don't really have somebody sitting there and looking at a clay model and saying, wow, you know, this is what I'm trying to capture. This is the feeling that I want to evoke when somebody goes into the dealership and buys it. But Mazda is very different. You see, Mazda doesn't design cars like an appliance. They take clay and they sculpt the car to make it beautiful. They care about how the light reflects off of the car and the different contours of it, and they care about the way the car drives and feels. And so everything is about the emotion that you feel getting into the car and the experience that you have as a driver, the driving position, the way the footwell is sculpted out, the way the buttons you can interact with, and the tactile feel that you get from them. So it's a really, really interesting proposition. You've got a mainstream car that truly, genuinely cares about the way that the car looks and feels. And so that's what I think is so special about Mazdas. And today we are going to take a deep dive into this brand new CX-90. And it's so new, in fact, that it still has the wrapping on it. And shout out to Mazda of Toronto and Tara there, who's helped me out with getting this car. I really appreciate it. And Rana, the sales manager there, I truly, truly appreciate the opportunity to go and review this CX-90. So let's go. All right, so to kick things off, let's talk a little bit about this new 2024 Mazda CX-90. Now the first thing that's really important to know is, doesn't matter what trim you get it in, they all come standard with all-wheel drive, and you get the choice of two different hybrid models. You've got a sort of standard hybrid model, and then you've got a plug-in hybrid model as well. And so the benefit of having both is, of course, you're going to get better fuel economy. You also have the ability to choose whether you want the more performance-oriented one with the inline six, or if you want to go for the more sort of practical eco version of the car with sort of the plug-in hybrid option. And the great thing about this car too is not only does it deliver a great amount of power, but it also gives you really great fuel economy regardless of which model you choose. And we'll talk a little bit more about the driving dynamics as we go forward, but just take a look at it because I think the style of this car is really cool. It's hard to see it now because it's a little gray out, and the silver I don't think does it justice. If you get it in the red or one of the other really interesting colors, you truly get to see how the color bounces off the different body panels, and you get to see all the passion that's come through the design as the light sort of shimmers off of it. Now, this is a beautiful car, but it's not beautiful for everybody. I know everybody's got an opinion about it. I personally find this car to be pretty attractive. Some of the other brands have gone for a little bit more of a daring design, but Mazda has stuck true to its core and tries to get something a little bit more simple but very elegant. And I think they've done an exceptional job with this car. I specifically love the taillights. I think it looks really cool, especially over the 2016 model that I had, the last generation. And the great thing is they don't change up their vehicles that often, so you can buy this car now and still have it look fresh for 6-7 years down the road. The only angle that I think looks a little odd and interesting is just looking at sort of the back end over here. There's sort of a curve that comes down here and it juts in a little bit, and I feel like that just looks a little odd. But other than that, I find this car to be really, really beautiful. And I love the little chrome touches that they've got going around the car. If you take a look at the bottom here, just where the door sill would be, you've got the Mazda written out in really nice lettering. And even on the fender, just above the front wheel, you've got inline six printed on there. Of course, if you get the plug-in hybrid, obviously it won't say inline six, but it's pretty cool. You get to show off that you've got a 6-cylinder engine with your Mazda CX-90. And on the front, they've done a really nice job with a tasteful grille. It is big. Every car nowadays has a big grille, but I think it looks pretty restrained given the proportions of the car. The one thing that I find to be really interesting is the way they've designed the daytime running lights kind of going into the headlights over here. It has a really cool effect when you're looking at it at night, and the lights themselves are really nice. Small design, recessed in there, but they've got a lot of dimension to them. And so beauty is always in the eyes of the beholder. I find the CX-90 to be a really beautiful vehicle, and now it's time to go take a look at the inside. Now the beautiful design of the car also continues on the inside, and this to me is just so special. You know, when you get in a normal car nowadays, you expect them to be relatively nice, to have big screens, but Mazda, in my opinion, just takes it a step further. This really feels like a premium car. When you look at it, I mean, if you didn't have a Mazda badge there, you would think that you were looking at a BMW or Mercedes, one of the latest sort of premium luxury cars. And it's incredible that this really is a Mazda. It's at a normal price point and it competes very closely with all the other cars within the segment. And I'll put some details about pricing and the features of the car as well, so you can take a look at that. If you wanted to pause now, you're welcome to do that. But the interior of the car to me is just so special. I love the two-tone look on the steering wheel. You've got two different shades or two different colors of leather on the steering wheel. The leather is really, really soft, and you've got tactile buttons, which is something that you can't say for most vehicles nowadays. And you even have those tactile buttons over here if you want to turn off the parking sensors or traction control or the stop-start system and all the other really great things, your seat memory. Those are all here. You don't have to go look at them buried in some menu. And you've got this really nice Alcantara type feeling material along the door panel and real metal for the door handle, which is not something you get in a lot of cars. Even the mirror buttons and the window buttons feel really premium. There's not any play in them, and even the plastic feels nice, and you've got that little beautiful chrome sort of accent along them as well. So there's a lot to like with the interior. And as we step inside, you're greeted by two really beautiful screens, and I'll just turn on the car now so you can get a sense for those. And the black levels, the contrast, the color, It's just so nice to see a car that has such a high resolution and really nice looking screen. Even on some of the more premium cars that you can buy out there for more money, they don't look as good. The only downside of the screen is it's just not very configurable. You can configure the sort of right hand dial, but other than that, there isn't really much configurability that you can have. There's no map that you can overlay or anything like that. But if we look our way up just a little bit more, you can see that there's a really nice heads-up display, and that's not something you get in every car. It looks very simple right now, but once you start driving, it shows you a lot of really great information. You also have a beautiful infotainment screen over here. It's not the largest in the segment, but it does a really nice job not only of displaying the information that you want, but you also have, again, really nice contrast and black levels. It's a beautiful looking screen, and to me, this is something that really makes a difference when it comes to technology in a car. You want something usable, but you also want something that's going to look great, especially over time. Now, one thing that Mazda does exceptionally well that you don't get in a lot of cars, again, is just the ability to go and press real buttons. And the reason for that is they believe that the driving experience, the fact that you can sit in the car and focus on driving as opposed to going through messy infotainment systems and trying to find buttons in menus that are really difficult to find, that you have buttons that you can press and you can remember, so you don't have to worry about trying to find things as you're driving along. And it's great because you've got everything you need on the steering wheel. You've got your volume buttons, you've got the source buttons for the different radio and sort of audio settings, you've got your voice control buttons over here and cruise control, and you've got your paddle shifters on the back as well, which is kind of nice if you want to change gears on your own. And that just gives me a sense of premium feel, and something that I feel is missing from a lot of the competition. And as you look at the HVAC controls too, you've got your heated seats, your steering wheel heating as well, and all of your HVAC controls right over here. And the buttons feel really nice. They feel very premium when you press on them. It's hard to sort of explain when you're just looking at it through a camera, but I really love these toggle switches over here that allow you to play between the different temperature settings for the HVAC system. And overall, it's a nice design. It's very clean, very simple, and you've got a lot of space over here as well, and a beautiful design. Finally, you don't get gloss black plastic over here. You've got this sort of wood looking trim, which I think looks very premium, with the cup holders and an interesting little shifter over here. And overall, it just gives you a sense of premium quality. Now, the one thing that I find to be really interesting as well with this whole center area is the use of space. Even though you have buttons over here, dedicated buttons for the volume and the rotary dial and the little shortcut menu buttons over here for the infotainment system, they've kept it really clean. It doesn't look too cluttered. You don't feel like you're being bombarded with buttons. And it just goes to show you that, well, when you have buttons, you can still make it work really nicely with a modern design for the car. And you also have a wireless charge pad over here, which is really nice, and your sport drive mode over there. Overall, really, really nice packaging. And when it comes to storage, you've got this really nice opening center armrest here that allows you to have one person with their arm on it and still have the ability to open it, and a nice little pocket over here. It's not super deep, but you still have the USB charge ports in there if you wanted to. And again, it's just a nice use of space. One thing that I wanted to mention just about the design of the interior of this car, I really, really love this suede material. It just feels so nice. I don't know how well it's going to hold up over time if you get a lot of sort of moisture and anything else that sort of touches this material, but for now, as it's new, it just feels really beautiful. And the color continues along down here. You've got this really nice strip of aluminum that goes along, and it just looks great going around the air vents. And this may be a bit of a reserved style when it comes to the air vents, because some companies do a better job of hiding them, but I actually don't mind, because you have the ability to use these knobs to sort of direct the airflow, and you can do that really easily. I don't like having to go into a menu and having to touch a screen and figure out where the air is going. I want to be able to adjust it on the go. And the ones that we've got on the sides look really nice as well. They've done a beautiful job integrating them, and you've got one over here on this side as well. And when I close the door, you'll see there aren't any big panel gaps. It just flows really nice with the design. You've got the Bose sound system as well, which is integrated very nicely. And you've got relatively slim pillars over here. I'm actually impressed because my Mazda CX-9 seems to have thicker pillars, and here they've managed to do a good job of keeping those thin. The headliner is also really nice. It's a material which feels very premium. And of course, you've got a rimless rear view mirror with your garage door opener buttons over there, and all of the buttons that you need to sort of take care of the lighting at the top. The one thing that is really awesome that they have here is a sunglass holder. So many car companies are doing without that. And you know what, if you're driving around with a family, it's really nice to have a sunglass holder in there as well. Shifting our view just a little bit over to the side here, you'll notice you've got a beautiful panoramic sunroof. Right now it's covered by the plastic from the manufacturer, but other than that, you'd have a really nice view here, and that sunroof opens up as well, which is really cool. This section over here, and you've got a power folding blind that comes across, so you don't have to manually reach all the way back there to close your sunroof. Now moving into the middle row of the CX-90, this is a special place to be too, because if you've taken notice, all the materials that we had in the front, they carry forward to the middle row as well. And I love that. They haven't cheapened out. You've got really nice soft touch materials here, the same Alcantara feeling material over here, that fake wood that you've got up here, the same metal door handle. You've got the stitching on the door pull as well, really big deep pockets over here on the door. And you've got one of my favorite features when you have kids, you've got the sliding up blind. And the great thing about this too is you've got a massive entrance. You don't always think about stuff like this, but you can open the door 90 degrees, which gives you a huge opening for getting in and out of the car and loading things up. Now the back seat over here has the same leather that you've got in the front. It's a beautiful premium leather, and it feels very, very soft and plush. And that's something that is really impressive when you're looking at the car. It also feels really great. In this configuration, you also have this center sort of console area for the back seat with the same split folding and opening area over here. So you've got some additional storage back here, and that is always welcome because when you're going on a nice long road trip, it's nice to have some extra space to put some stuff. And of course, you've got your cup holders in the middle here as well. And you've got your own separate HVAC controls for the back seat passengers, which is really nice, especially at this price point. It's great to see that, as well as having heated and ventilated seats. Not every car in this segment has heated and ventilated seats, and you've got them here in the back of the CX-90. That's something that is really awesome. And you've also got the USB Type-C charging. So they've really modernized the interior of this car, and I think this is something that's going to hold up well over time. Now getting into the third row is really simple as well. You've got a lever here that you just pull on, and it brings the seat forward, and then all you do is just push it a little bit, it slides all the way forward, and you've got a nice opening here to get into the back. And the seats in the third row are just as nice as the seats in the front. Granted, they don't have the perforation over here, but in terms of the leather quality and the material, it's exactly the same. And just because you're sitting in the back doesn't mean you don't get some extra stuff. You've got cup holders here. You also have USB charging back here as well. And you've got the speakers around there. So it's not so bad sitting in the third row. And it's great that they have a little window in the back there as well, so you don't have to feel super claustrophobic. The only downside of all this is when you try to put the seat back, it doesn't remember the position it was in. So you'll notice here, it's sitting a little forward and not as reclined as it was before. And so to get that seat back to where you want it to be, you have to manually push the seat back and adjust the incline of the seat as well. All right, now going into the tailgate, you have got a little electronic popper over there. Pop the trunk open, and what you'll notice is you actually have a decent amount of space behind the third row. It's not massive by any stretch, and I think if you got a Volkswagen Atlas or even a Pilot, you probably would have a little bit more room, but otherwise it still is a good amount of space. And you've got some really nice cubbies on the left hand side. And one of the great things about Mazda is they also give you some great charging options in the back here as well. So if you wanted to charge something with a household plug, you've got the ability to do that. If you're going on a trip somewhere and you don't have an adapter, this makes life a little bit easier. And you've got some tie downs, which allows you to carry your shopping bags with ease and not have things float around the back of the car. Now, if we take a look under the load floor, you'll see there isn't a whole lot of space under here, and that probably has something to do with the mild hybrid system. So unfortunately, you don't get a lot of extra storage under there, but we'll forgive that because of the beauty of the car. Now, the other thing is, because you've got a very sloped roof line, you lose a little bit of space up here. It's not going to be a deal breaker for most people because you're giving up for a little bit of style, but otherwise that is something to consider. If you go on big trips or you carry a lot of big items, you want to be conscious of the fact that this trunk is not going to be as spacious or as easy to use as something that may be a little more boxy looking. And just before I close off the trunk area, I really like that they have the button over here to lock the car. Once you close the trunk, not a lot of manufacturers do that, but it's really great that you can either close the trunk or you can close and lock it from this button. Now, just before we set off for our drive, I did want to mention one thing. When you think about the driving experience, the Footwell plays a big role in it. And sorry for my lack of pants and wearing shorts here. But I want you to take note of something. I'm sitting relaxed in sort of a very straight, comfortable position. The way that the pedal box is set up is in a way that I'm sitting in a very relaxed position. Some pedal boxes have your foot justified a little bit more to one side versus the other, but Mazda takes a lot of care in making sure that you're sitting in a very neutral position so that you'll be as comfortable as you can be when you're driving the car. All right, now let's go for our drive. Okay, so how does the Mazda CX-90 drive? Well, we're going to find out, but before we jump into that, I did want to mention one last thing about the sort of infotainment system and the quality of everything. The quality of the backup cameras is really impressive. There are a lot of different cars out there that have 360 cameras and lots of other visuals, but the camera quality is not always amazing, and I'm so impressed at the quality of the cameras in this particular vehicle. For all the cameras that you've got around the car, they are super sharp and they give you a really nice feed. And I'm going to show you that. I'll overlay that just now so you can get a feel for that. But it's one of the things that is really impressive. And there's a dedicated button that you can press to turn on the cameras, and it gives you a really nice 360-degree view. Let's go for our drive. So right off the bat, it's a very, very comfortable car. And I'm sure you imagine that just by looking at the different materials that we've got built in here. But it's a very quiet and comfortable space. And even when I had my 2016 CX-9, I was truly impressed at how quiet the cabin was. Now this car, because it's got a bigger engine, you do hear a little bit of that come through. So it's not going to be as quiet from an engine noise perspective, but overall, you don't get a lot of ambient noise coming from outside. It really is a luxury experience in here. And the seats are very comfortable. You can get a really great driving position from getting into the car. It's easy to position, and you've got all of the adjustments that are available for you just on the side of the seat. And one thing that you couldn't do in the previous generation car that you can do here is you can actually lift up the front of the seat. So instead of just pivoting sort of on one point, you have the ability here to also lift up the front of the seat, which allows a lot more adjustment, and to me allows you to have a much better driving position. Now otherwise, it's a very easy vehicle to get along with, as I'm sure you can imagine. The throttle response is pretty good. It's nothing too powerful that you can't manage, but it's got a little bit of excitement to it when you drive it, which is something that I think goes very well with the ethos of the company, in that it creates an experience that feels a little bit more engaging to drive than perhaps other vehicles. The steering is very light when you're just sort of poodling around, but if you are going at a higher speed or you're accelerating, you feel the steering wheel get a little stiffer and tighten up, and that just gives you a little bit more of that excitement when you're driving around. Now, otherwise, visibility in the car is great. There are a lot of big windows around here. You don't have these massive blind spots that you have with the old CX-9 with the front. Here you've got a little bit more room looking around, and especially with the panoramic sunroof, it feels very airy and spacious in here. Now, otherwise, the suspension is damped really nicely. It is a bit more on the sporty side, I would say, than perhaps some of the other competitors out there, which to me is more exciting, and that's something that I would enjoy driving. There also is a rear-wheel drive bias to this car's all-wheel drive system, so when you're pushing it harder and you're going out of a corner, you feel that it gets a bit more planted in the back than you probably would from, anything else that's more front-wheel drive biased, like Toyota Highlander or Honda Pilot or something like that. So the driving experience is really nice. And overall, I think there's a unique demographic that this car is designed for. There are a lot of vehicles in this segment. It's a very crowded space. But the reason why I think this vehicle stands out and why I think it's so special is there was so much thought and care that was put into not only the look of the car, but also the design of the interior and the way that you interact with it. And that to me is something that you don't get nowadays. Everybody thinks that if you have a bigger screen or you throw all this technology at it, that it's going to be a better driving experience, and it just isn't. And that to me is unfortunate, and I've talked a lot about that in other videos. I wish there was more of a focus around, what people actually need and how they interact with the vehicle, and just make that a more seamless and easy to use experience. So the CX-90, I think, delivers that in spades. If you're looking for a car that has, the biggest screen and the latest gadgets, you probably won't get all of that in the CX-90, but if you want a car that feels way above its class in terms of material quality, in terms of driving experience, and overall comfort, I think the CX-90 is your car. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've definitely enjoyed making it, and again, huge shout out to Mazda of Toronto for loaning me this car for the day. And I really appreciate Rana, the sales manager there, and Tara, who's been able to help me out with making sure that we got the vehicle today. You are an exceptional group of people at Mazda of Toronto, and it's been a pleasure getting a chance to get to know this CX-90, especially because I have a CX-9 that I can compare to, and I've got to say I'm really impressed with it. Thanks again for watching. I hope you found this video insightful and helpful, and I will see you in the next video.